Our featured guest tonight is a country artist who burst onto the scene with his self-titled album Rockie Lynne and his hit songs More and Lipstick. His new documentary, Rockie Lynne, Where I Belong, airing on PBS and Amazon Prime, reveals the incredible journey he's taken in life, from orphan to successful recording artist, and to now owning his biological father's Martin guitar. You really can't make this stuff up. Here to chat about it all and his brand new record, Love, is none other than Rockie Lynne. Rockie, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, David. What a pleasure to be on your show, and thank you for having me, sir.
So, Rocky, man, what a journey your life has been, and what a story you have to tell. I'd like to start kind of at the beginning. I know you were an orphan and adopted young, if I understood correctly. What is your first conscious memory of your adopted mother and father?
Well, my first memory, I guess, gosh, that's I haven't been asked that before. So, my first memory of my mother, well, in the old days, I'm about 200 years old, but in the old days, orphanages were these big, long metal. There was a brick building that I was in. There was about maybe 200 of us, and usually the babies get adopted pretty quick. But if you make it past infanthood and you get to 3, 4, 5 years old, you're pretty much going to be there. That's how that goes. My mom and dad, the lady and gentleman that adopted me, who I call my mom and dad, they had had trouble having children on their own, and they were very blue collar folks, and so they were allowed, I guess, to adopt one of the older kids. And I remember the day that my mom walked in, and she looked right at me. I was sitting up in the front next to the record player, and she said, "That's the one. I want that one." As soon as she saw me, which is a joy. And my dad, who talks like the guy in Sling Blade. You ever seen that movie Sling Blade?
No, I was out sick that day.
Like with Billy Bob Thornton, anyway. It's an old
Oh, okay.
movie he made. In that movie, he talks like the guy in Sling Blade. He goes, "Don't pick the first one you see." That's how it started. That's funny. I hadn't thought about that in forever. That's great. Yeah. So I remember the first day that I met them. But the reality is that those two people, David, were the first people that ever cared if I had anything to eat. They aren't the first people that cared if I had any clothes on my back or if I was going to get some kind of education or have some kind of life. Both of them grew up in the Depression era. My dad was a Korean War veteran. He had to quit school in the fifth grade so he could raise his 10 brothers and sisters because his dad was paralyzed from a car accident. He's missing two fingers on his left hand, and he had to work really, really hard. And he was determined that I would not go through that same endeavors that he went through. So he was kind of tough on me, and he wanted me to have a better life than him. And I hope he's 92 years old now, and he lives right behind me in a little what they call a tiny house. And I get to make sure that he has food and a roof over his head on the last part of his journey. So I have to tell you, man, that always knew I would do it. I didn't know it would mean so much to me to care for him and to be able to help him as he transitions onto the next part of whatever waits for him.
I mean, obviously, you didn't know anything about your birth father and his connection to country music while growing up, but surely, given the trajectory of your life, your adopted mom and dad, I presume, had some musical tastes or influences which played some sort of role. What kind of music was being listened to in your home growing up, and what influence would you say your adopted mom and dad had on the trajectory your life took musically?
Well, that's a great question, David. There was very little music in our home. We were poor. My dad, like I said, he had quit between the fifth and sixth grade, so he had to work as a maintenance man at a furniture factory, and he worked hard. He got up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and he'd get home when it was dark, and he'd work at the house until it was time to go to bed. We didn't have a television. We didn't have a radio for a long time. Eventually, we got a radio, but it was only an AM radio. And so there was no music except for church music. And that was at the Baptist church on Sunday morning, Sunday evening, and Wednesday. We were there all the time, and they were singing the bringing in the sheaves and all that kind of stuff. And I really loved that music, to be honest with you. I couldn't read the hymnals, but I remember very early on as they were playing those, most of those uh, hymnals are kind of one chord to the dominant fifth chord and back, that sort of kind of waltzy marching sort of sound, and I would make up my own words to the words they were thinking. Of course, and I would think to myself at 5, I'm thinking, I think my song's better than the Bring in the Sheaves song because I didn't know what a sheave was, right?
I
So
still
there
don't.
wasn't a lot of music, and it wasn't encouraged in my house because my dad really wanted me to get an education, and he wanted me to. His idea of success would be working at a bank or something like that. And unfortunately, from the moment I was 4 or 5 years old, I always knew that I wanted to try to learn how to play guitar. And so, as I stated earlier, I'm about 200 years old now, and I'm still trying to learn how to play the guitar.
Um, so is that when you would say the music bug bit you, or was it at some other point when you heard something else, like a country song, or you were like a lot of people, the Beatles or something?
Well, at the orphanage, this man came. They used to take us into the laundry room, which was a big open area in front of the washers, and people would come and read stories and um, they would do things to read to the orphans there. And this man came in. His name was Niley, and he played acoustic guitar, and he sang, "I'm going to Alabama" with a banjo on my knee. And I was sitting right in front of him, kind of squatted, just watching this man play, and then that was it. That was when I got what I call the disease. I mean, it just totally engulfed me, and I thought I want to learn how to do that. And I knew at that point that that was what I was going to do. And then it took a really long time for me to actually get a guitar because I got adopted. We were financially challenged, so I ended up between my fifth grade and sixth grade year. I mowed yards with this guy who had a little lawn mowing company. The company consisted of a push mower and a ride mower. He would ride and I would push, and we mowed yards. And I made $100, and I ordered a guitar from J.C. Penney. So I got that going into the sixth grade. But I'd wanted one since I was just a small child. I had wanted that guitar. So when I finally got my hands on one, I had all these things I'd made up in my mind of what it would sound like and what it would do. And I should mention a couple years before that, at the First Baptist Church in Statesville, North Carolina, at a yard sale, I got a phonograph with 2 albums. And the 2 albums were Kiss Alive and Jimi Hendrix Axis Bold as Love. At a church yard sale, they were 75 cents, and my mom gave me 75 cents, and she was more concerned about getting the quarter back than she was the money. And I knew that my dad would ban that music as soon as he heard it. So I kept it in my closet in my room, and I'd listen to it with my head right next to the speaker for hours and hours at night. So, and I would look at the pictures. And so in the pictures, I wanted to be Gene Simmons, but the sound I heard in my head was Ace Frehley. So that was the music that just took me over and made me wanted to be that guy. I still got that guitar. You want to see it? I think it's
Yeah,
right here. Hold on a
that's
second.
great.
I still got that guitar I bought for $100.
Well, you know what's funny is I was Ace Frehley for like Halloween for like when I was like 10 and 11 or 11 and 12 for like 2 years in a row. You
Did you
know?
do your own makeup?
Yeah, did my own makeup and made all the silver parts with aluminum foil.
Oh, that's great,
Yeah,
man.
how
This
crazy
is
is
the
that?
guitar I bought for $99 at J.C. Penney's. It's a global, and it was made at the Matsushita factory in Japan, and it still plays and sounds pretty dang good, man.
That's wild.
You got any pictures of that Ace Frehley thing?
I don't have pictures of that, but I did eventually get to go to a show and had a buddy who worked backstage, and he was able to sign one of the very first albums for me. But yeah, I had a live too. I remember those albums, and it was mostly because my uncle, who was only 4 years older than me, was into that and influenced me in that way.